Good evening, everyone. My name is Takiwa Smith. I'm founder and executive director of Science, Engineering, Mathematics Link Incorporated, and I want to welcome you to our first Teen Science Cafe of 2021. We are so excited after a hiatus for the holidays to rest, regroup, and reflect to be able to resume our Teen Science Cafes for you. So the Teen Science Cafe is a program of our Math and Science Career Academy. And the goal of this is to expose teens to STEM careers and have the opportunity for them to learn about the various STEM career paths and how to pursue them by talking to members of the STEM community at a critical age when kids are thinking about college and college applications and what to major in. They get a nice roadmap, an idea of what they want to do once they graduate from high school. So I'm going to introduce our program coordinator, Carlin Pounders, that is going to introduce tonight's speaker.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Tonight's speaker, Dr. Melo-Jean Yap, is the principal investigator for Influential Networks for Women of Color in STEM Community College Pathways, a grant funded by the National Science Foundation. She is also a postdoctoral research fellow in NSF-funded grant, ADAPT, a pedagogical decision-making study at San Diego State. Dr. Yap's interdisciplinary training in biology, education, and ethnic studies shaped her versatility in using concurrent methodologies to advance research on underrepresented groups in STEM fields. Her biology training via National Institutes of Health programs, Mark Scholars Program, and MBRS RISE Graduate Fellowship and background in teaching biology prepared her for navigating STEM spaces. Since 2013, Dr. Yap has also been a FASEB Mark mentor, coaching undergraduates in presenting their research at the annual Biomedical Research Conference for minority students. A knowledge broker, Dr. Yap hopes to conduct research that may help empower students and professors, as well as inform STEM praxis and policy. She is also the project director for Georgia State University's STEM is Literacy, a U.S. Department of Education grant that trains middle school educators in integrating culturally relevant pedagogy into science and math curriculum. She obtained her BS in Physiology and BA in Black Studies, now known as Africana Studies, from San Francisco State University, her master's in biology from California State University, Los Angeles, and her Ph.D. in education from UCLA. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Dr. Yap.
Hi, y'all. I want to thank, Takiwa and Carlin for inviting me to give this talk today. And it's really, I'm seeing as, sharing my journey and my work. And so maybe, somebody out there could be inspired or, gain some information or insight into, what you want to pursue later on. So really today, my goal is to, show you that there are many paths, in the STEM fields. And I also want you to know, even as a young person, that you are a producer of knowledge, no matter what stage of this STEM pathway you're in, and you can self-determine, your own path. And later on, if you change your mind, you can also evolve, and that's okay. So you really have, um, the self-determination to figure out and pave your own path. And now in terms of my path, I now determined that it's to help transform the STEM pathways for Black and Brown students and other underrepresented students in this field. Okay, so that's me. And well, in the introduction, they already told you my role, so I'm gonna skip this over. But I do want to talk about first about where I went to high school, because I know this cafe is targeted to like middle school and high school students. And I'm actually very excited to share this because when I do talks, I never ever talk about my high school. And so this is such a great and awesome opportunity for me. So I went to school at this place called King Drew Medical Magnet High School in Watts, California. You see that picture below there of Nipsey Hussle. And so he actually went to middle school in Watts, and he was classmates with my classmates when I went to high school. And so my high school was actually named after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the scientist Charles Drew. And basically, um, it came about because the local activists in the Watts community, which is in South Central uh, Los Angeles, they came together and they demanded that a school be built so that it can expose the youth in the area, but also in LA in general, to like science and health careers. So that's how my school came about. It's basically from the activism of that community. And so, and I would say for me, this was really my entry point into the STEM field. Um, Before high school, I mean, I was already interested in science and math. I was doing science fair and things like that, but this school had like a really unique curriculum because it was connected to the community hospital that serves, this area of LA is in South Central, and it's called MLK Junior Community Hospital. And so actually every week, all of the students, we had to go to the hospital to shadow the doctors, the nurses, different parts of the hospital. I know some of my friends, they went to like the ER, some went to like the OBGYN office, some went to the morgue. And so in my case, they assigned me to a research lab. And so actually that's where I started doing research. I was like 14 years old. So that's actually a picture of me. I believe I was doing some kind of tissue culture of HeLa cells. You may have heard of Henrietta Lacks. So that was the first cell I ever worked on. And yeah, so that's where I became like, exposed to doing research. Um, and, as also the first in my family, because my family immigrated to the United States from the Philippines and Saipan and Guam. And so I was the first in my family to go to school here. And so I had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Because my family, they, you know, they emphasize education, but like the actual process, like how do I go about and navigate education? I wasn't sure. They weren't sure. So I had to figure it out. But thanks to, my classmates, my teachers at my high school, I felt really lucky to have them as a support. And so I also volunteered at another hospital. So there's a picture of me. I think I was 16 years old at that time. And then I was in the science bowl. I was in the math team. And so I explored different curricular activities. But what you're not seeing here, actually, I was also doing like non-STEM things, right? So at some point I was in the school play. So that's not STEM related. But if you have an interest that's not STEM related, I think you should still cultivate those interests, because it just makes you like a more like well-rounded person, right? And more interesting too. Okay, so after I graduated from high school, I went to college. Actually, I went to different colleges because I transferred, right? Because I kind of had like a culture shock. Like, what is this place? I was used to, LA and South Central and the diversity. And then I went to school that was like predominantly white, and I had a culture shock. I wasn't sure how to navigate it. But even with transferring between schools, I was still interested in science. And so I tried different things. Like I said, my family just said, get your education, but they didn't know the exact Like, how do you do that? And I think that could be a good thing and a bad thing. So I'd say it was a good thing because then I was free to explore my different interests. And maybe it's not such a great thing because then I became kind of, some people would call it scattered, right? Um, but in the end, it all worked out for me. So you see this picture right here. I did like a marine biology program in Maine, like on this island off the coast of Maine, which is really random, but I did it. Um, and then eventually, I also did some like science education outreach programs in college, and so that's a picture up here. So basically, with my classmate, we co-taught science lessons to like fourth graders and fifth graders in the San Francisco area, and so being able to do that reminded me, it's like, oh, okay, like I need to really bring science into like other kids like me, like other black and brown kids, other like working class kids, kids who like their parents just immigrated here. So then they have some exposure to it. And then eventually I got into the program that Carlin mentioned, which is the MARK program. And that allowed me to then do more research. So here you're looking at a salamander, and that's me. I was in a stream. This is like in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was trying to collect those little salamanders, the juvenile salamanders, for research. And then also being in that program allowed me to go to conferences. So this is one of the conferences that I went with my friends. And I don't know if you all recognize this. That's the astronaut Mae Jemison, and she's so amazing. And we got to see her speak, and we had a great time. And so I guess I'm just showing this to show you that you should explore different opportunities so that you can figure out, do I really want to do this, or do I want to do some other STEM related activity. And so these are pictures from my graduate program, my master's program. And so, like I said, I was working on salamanders and frogs when I was in college. And actually, we were looking at this fungus that's kind of killing a lot of different frog species all over the world. And so, being in that lab made me think about, I'm really interested in how diseases spread across space and time. So how do I like learn to do that? And so I figured, maybe I should learn how to create those disease spread models, right? um and so when I did my master's, I signed up with a lab that didn't necessarily do disease models, but it allowed me to learn how to code, to do programming. And so we were working on mussel beds. Like you all know mussels, like the seafood that you can eat. And so how the mussels I guess in the coast of California, on certain parts of California, these mussel beds really grow um, like by like large part of the coast, right? And so we were studying the how they're layered, right? And also when the big waves come from the storm, um, they kind of peel off parts of the mussel bed. And so what we were doing was figuring out the way the mussel beds are getting ripped off from the coast. Is that random, or is there like a pattern that that it undergoes while this disturbance is happening on that ecosystem? And so that's why we were studying. And before that, I've never programmed before, because all of my experience before was in a wet lab, and that means with a microscope and the tissue culture, things like that. But also some field work, right? And you saw me trying to get those little salamanders out in the field. And so this was really my first time working with models, and actually learning how to program. And it was just a really, I guess I didn't know what I was, I didn't know what I signed up for, but I just was interested and curious. But I would say that was life changing for me. I mean, intellectually, because it was such a, it was a very challenging thing to learn how to code and write a master's thesis for, but I did it, yay. But also, this new skill allowed me to, again, go to different conferences and meet a lot of great people and grow as a scholar, really. And so here you just see pictures of me in different conferences. Um, this is, I don't know if y'all know who this is, Mike Eric Dyson. That's one of the conferences I went to. And then this is Dr. Gutierrez, and he was also the program director of um, the fellowship that I was in. And I'm showing his picture because even though this was about like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, this picture, um, I got him to join the advisory board for my grant. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if you meet someone, like a decade back or 13 years back, you just never know how that person can stay in your life, in your professional life. And so even though I haven't seen him in about 10 years, when I asked him to join my grant, he happily joined the advisory board. And so um, some of these connections that you make, they're really, some of them can be for life, if you choose to keep the, wonderful people around. Okay. And then I know in the flyer you probably say, what's this thing about Bangladesh? Okay, so when I was a master's student, I saw this opportunity to conduct like applied epidemiology research in Bangladesh, and it was fully funded. So actually, a lot of the programs that I was in, like, they pay for your tuition, they pay for you to have a professional development. So that means going to conferences. And so it's really good to look for this kind of opportunities, right? And so this particular program, it's by EcoHealth Alliance. And yeah, so it allowed me to go to Bangladesh, spend a summer there. I think this was 10 years ago. And basically, what we did there was we did two major things. So, in the top picture, what we're doing there is sampling wild birds for avian influenza. And so, what you're really seeing is we go to a village where there's been some accounts of birds dying off like randomly. And so, we drove up there and then we made like a makeshift lab, right? I guess that, when you're in that kind of situation, you have to bring your own supplies and make whatever environment you're in and make that a lab itself. And so basically, we caught some birds and we took their blood samples and basically look at their blood to see if they've been exposed to avian influenza. So if they show like antibodies in their blood for avian influenza, that means they've had it. And so we did that. And then we also, here at the bottom, you'll see this is actually some fruit bats. So we also sampled fruit bats uh, because in this region or in this part of the world, they've been linked to a Nipah virus transmission in this part of Bangladesh. And so what we're doing in this case was just trying to sample them, taking their blood, see if they've been exposed to Nipah virus, um, and clippings and things like that, just so we know the transmission of this virus in that area to prevent future pandemics, similar to the one we're in right now. And so uh, the whole thing with the EcoHealth Alliance is this thing called One Health, where you're basically seeing the interconnectedness of animal health, environmental health, and the impact also on human health. So it's kind of like this triad, right? And so being in this experience was, I guess it was also life changing. Not just because of the science, right? Because that's very important and enlightening for me, but just to be there. And we're not just doing all science. I'm like having conversations with the scientists who were there, and I think what struck me was really how important uh, diversity, the representation of like black and brown scientists in roles like what I did. Because when I was there, um, one of the scientists asked me about, I don't know who told him, or maybe it's a bunch of different previous Americans who went there, but they were just like, um, oh yeah, in America, the government really takes care of the the Native Americans, right? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not sure what you're trying to ask me. It's like, oh yeah, they provide them schools and gives them all the food and money and things like that that they need. And then I was really confused, and I was wondering, like, is this like a language barrier? And then because when he was telling me that, I was thinking, like, is he talking about reservations? Um, so I asked him, like, do you mean they put them in reservations? And then he was like, of course he didn't know. He's not from here. Um, but I was just struck at like who told you that, right? Because I don't know how much American history they get. Um, but I'm assuming it's like, other Americans who have told him these things. And it was just bizarre to me because, you know, um, there's a lot of issues at reservations, and um whoever told him this information was making it seem like, oh, it's like this heavenly great place. And I'm sure it's great in its own way, but I'm talking about there's a lot of poverty and other like negative things. And so I feel like being there and questioning these things that they think about America, and breaking down those, I don't even know if that's a stereotype, but this misinformation, right, about people of color in the United States. And um, so that's why I really think it's important for, people like us, like conscious black and brown scientists to be the face over there. So then we can tell like the truth. But anyway, um, also, doing this study, it really showed me a lot about social dynamics, right? And so how the virus would spill over from, different animals and then onto people. And so even though actually I'm not doing this kind of research anymore, it does still influence, my interest in this kind of social dynamics and networks. Okay, yeah, and then these are also other research experiences I've had. I really done a lot of different research experiences. I was in a fly healthy study, and that's me with my swab, and basically, um, this study is about going on flights across the country, and I had to swab um, the door handles of the bathrooms, and also the table. When you get on an airplane, I don't know when was the last time you flew, because we're in a pandemic, but you have like the tray table. So I swabbed that, and I also swabbed the belts, like for each seat. And then I did say the bathroom door. Okay. And so I swabbed them, and then we analyzed, okay, what kind of, bacteria and either microorganisms are there. And then at some point, I was in a microbiology lab studying E. coli. That's a picture of me uh, collecting aquatic bugs, um, because sometimes like certain bugs would appear in like a healthy stream or like an unhealthy stream. And so we're kind of doing like a water quality assessment there. And then that's me with some new friends when I went to like a statistical camp in Washington. And so I guess I want to show that because, like I said, whichever pathway you go to, you're going to meet people, and these people can become like your friends. So I believe the one in the middle, she's now like a statistical geneticist at Johns Hopkins. And then I think Nidia is, she's a postdoc, if I forgot where right now. But anyway, somewhere in Maryland. But anyway, I just wanted to show y'all that, okay, I'm going from one research project to another, and one conference to another, and one workshop to another. You really like meet all these people, and you just never know um like where you're gonna see them again, if you're gonna work with them again. But I think it's great to make friends, right? And speaking of friends, some friends become family. And so there's this group called Fastedmark, and somehow I got linked to them because I think they were holding like a grant writing workshop like years ago. And then after doing that workshop, I guess they liked me and they invited me to be one of the mentors. And so it was a mix of mentors who were already faculty members, and then there were also like mentors who were still getting their PhD. So I was one of those still in their PhD. But yeah, they being with them, it's like my family. So I'm showing like a lot of happy pictures, but there's a lot of struggle too that came that that are not represented by the pictures. And it's good to have good people, family, who are your family, right? Your chosen family. So I would say this is like my STEM family, because not only do they tell me about opportunities, but if I'm like feeling not my best, then they can like give me some advice or some support. um and so I think it's good to find people like that who become like your family. So I was getting this professional development with them, but also I was getting like a psychological empowerment with them. And so this is just like us at different conferences. This is like at a sports medicine conference. And that's Doug E. Fresh. He was at the sports medicine conference because I guess he started like a hip hop and public health initiative. And so it's just great um, having good people around you. So if you find uh, a supportive, good person, you should like really stick to them. Okay, and then eventually, I know this is like going like 10 million different ways. But eventually I realized, say, okay, I did all this research, right? Different kinds of research, right? Lab research, field research, um, theoretical, computational research. And then I think what, in the end, I was like, oh, you know what? I think what I want to do is actually help other students, that are like from underrepresented backgrounds to like navigate this space, especially having the insider knowledge of being around all these different places. Um, really showed me like the ins and outs of things that maybe someone who was never in STEM, but they do STEM education. And I'm not like talking down at them or anything. I'm just saying it's different when you've been there, and to have that kind of insight and how to navigate that space. And so yeah, like Carlin said, I went to UCLA to get my PhD in education. This is my dissertation committee. So actually, remember I told you in college I went to like some I did like a program outreach for elementary school kids. She was my teacher, and so going like 13 years back or something like that, like more than a decade. I got her to be in my dissertation committee. And actually right now she's in my advisory the advisory board member of my grant. Her name is Kimberly Tatter. And so, like I said, you got to hang on to the people who are really down for you, because you're in it for the long haul, and you want those kind of support systems. And so up here, so this is a barbecue. So one summer, UCLA had this program. It's called STEER, and basically they get students from HBCUs go to UCLA during the summer, and they learn about education research. And so the intern that was assigned to my mentor, my advisor, is Jasmine, right? She's right there. And so my advisor was like, "Oh yeah, teach Jasmine how to do like everything." So essentially, I worked the whole summer with Jasmine, and she was an English major. But the research that we did, I taught her how to use R, which is another programming software. And in 10 weeks, not only did she learn enough R to produce a project, but she also did like a symposium presentation about it. And so I just thought that was cool, because as an English major, you're probably not thinking about learning programming, but I love those opportunities for people to just kind of expand and grow and do things that you've never done before. And so I find those kind of collaborations really exciting. And then here, the other picture you're seeing, one summer I also did like a public policy kind of internship in San Francisco and Sacramento. The organization is called Public Policy Institute of California. And so that summer, basically, we look at this thing called math misplacement. And so what's happening, I'm sure it's happening in other places, but in California, sometimes if you're an eighth grader and you took Algebra 1 and you passed it, but then you go to the ninth grade to a high school, and sometimes the counselors would still put you in Algebra 1, even though you passed Algebra 1 already in the eighth grade. And so this happens disproportionately to Black and Brown students. And this actually happened to my cousin, and that kind of sets you back. It's like, if you already passed the class, then why do you have to repeat the same class all over again? But it also it pushes you back, because it makes you less competitive to do the math sequence, right? By the time you apply to college, because if you're gonna do Algebra 1 all over again, you probably won't get to AP Calculus, unless you do like summer classes. And so that's what it was doing, on a broader scale. And so they introduced this new law in California that prevents counselors from doing that. And so I thought that was just also like a great experience, because now we're seeing, okay, how STEM education policy is so important, even at the middle school and high school stage. Okay, and so I'm going to make this quick. Carlin did mention that I'm a postdoc. So this is just my current roles now. And so ADAP is basically, we're looking at how college biology faculty makes decisions about their classroom curriculum. And by that, we mean, okay, how likely are they to adopt STEM classroom activities that can enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because sometimes there's some resistance, right? So that's really what we're doing there. And for this study, I interviewed the professors myself. And so that is also, again, I think without my background of navigating the STEM spaces, I don't think I would be as, confident in like interviewing them one-on-one, because that can be intimidating to some people, right? But since I've had my share of, being a student and being a research lab student and all that stuff, like I was able to navigate and get the information that we need. And then this is my current study, and I'm looking at the time and make sure we have enough time to go about it. But basically, my grant is focused on community college students, particularly women of color, STEM majors. Um, and so there's not a lot of ladies out there on the community college pathway, especially on women of color in STEM. And so that's what interested me in this. But also, I at some point I was a community college student, um, and so just having that experience as a student, and also I was a microbiology lab tech at a community college at some point, and also I taught microbiology at a community college, and so I feel like having these multiple roles um, gave me some insight on how to like navigate this space. But basically, we're looking at the pathway and persistence of this group in the community college. Um, yeah, and basically centering their standpoint and their voice and their experience, because I think a lot of times, um, especially community college, a lot of students of color, black and brown students go to the community college before they transfer. And so this is really like an overlooked pathway for STEM. And also, just based on my experience of being at the community college, I feel like, you have professionals who come in and say, "Oh, I know what you need as a student," instead of actually asking the students themselves, "What do you actually need? Like, what's your experience actually like?" Because if you want them to stay in STEM or even at the college, you should probably center their own voice, right, in the experience. Um, so I don't know if we have time, but basically, some of the frameworks that interest me about this research is one of them is feminist standpoint theory. Um, okay, sorry. And basically, it's think about it as okay, if you're a woman of color, you're not the predominant group, right, in this field. So everything, like the mainstream is like the white male kind of not gaze, but like point of view perspective. So and also you're not going to be at the center. You're kind of like in some kind of off center marginalized location. So I think for the longest time, uh people are like, oh, that's a bad thing. But does it have to be a bad thing? Because if you think about it, if you're not in the middle, right, you're in some off center location, um it's almost like you have two kinds of knowledge that you're creating here. You have the knowledge of how do I navigate this space that is like formed from the perspective of the dominant group, but then at the same time you have your actual location, the off-center location, and you have a unique kind of knowledge just from existing from that location. So it's almost like you have two kinds of knowledge um, that you're working with versus someone who's in a dominant group. We're just like, oh, that's all they know is like from being in the middle, in the mainstream. And so it's almost like you're in a location of marginality, but like you can use that to your advantage because you kind of have almost like a dual consciousness or dual knowledge going on for you, right? So yeah. And then these are the kind of data sources that we're looking at. We're looking at some national longitudinal databases that I can't show you because they're restricted. Uh, and then I also collected social network data. So actually, the data I collected, they're from my dissertation. And so the grant allowed me to expand my analysis on those things. So for the small group, not the long data set, for the small group, we have about 36 all women of color. They're between the ages of 19 to 37. And that sounds like a big age range, but that's just the reality of, folks who go to the community college. It's highly variable and highly diverse. And I think maybe that's possibly one of the reasons why there's not a lot of there's not as much research about community college, because they're scared of this variability, right? It's like, oh, we can't generalize it. But why should you generalize, right? I think that's the variability is a challenge, but it's also what makes it beautiful, because that's the reality. That is how these spaces are, and that's where a lot of our students of color are going. And so, going in there, I think it's like a wonderful opportunity. I call this place. It's a Hispanic serving institution, and it's called I call it Marvel Community College. And really, for the social network questionnaire, I just asked them their influences, like who influenced their scientific thinking, and also how they navigate, college and that space. And so, for the interest of time, now go through each of these aspects of scientific thinking. um, and then also, I'm doing this thing called egocentric network analysis. um, so I guess I'll show a quick one here. So look at the middle. This is called a sociogram, right? So look at the middle sociogram. And so in the middle of that middle sociogram, there's that circle. So in our case, that is called the ego, and that's also the participant. That's the one of the participants in the study. And these circles around them, those are called alters. And really, remember, I asked them who their influences are. So, for example, if this is Megan, um, and I asked her, Megan, who influenced the way you observe the world? And then she gave me, like, all the different people. Those are called alters. And the ties that you're seeing is basically mean the influence of those people. Now, if you look at some of the lines look thicker, right? And or closer. That means that the thicker they are, the more times they've been nominated by Megan. I'm going with that name. But also, if they're closer, that also means they were also nominated multiple times by the participant. Okay, so I quickly jump into the findings. And so again, we're looking at the influences to the scientific thinking of these participants, and also I call it navigational capital, just how they navigate the college, the community college. And after after each participant gave me the people who influenced them, right? I categorized uh, the nominees. I call them nominees. I categorized them by the relationship to the participant. And so I came up with this 8 relationship categories. There's family, college faculty and staff, K-12, public figures. That's like, Neil deGrasse Tyson or Albert Einstein. Schoolmates are people at their college. There's local community, or like they're not your friends, they're not any of the previous things, but they could be like someone from church, or your coworker, or your boss at if you work at the movie theater. And then there's friends, or people you met outside the college who are your friends. And then some people also put religious figures. Um, and so I centered their experience, and so if that's what they told me, then that's what I'm writing down. But in any case, if you look at, so the relationships are on the y-axis, and the x-axis is basically the percentage of participants who nominated that specific relationship. So if you look here, um, so this is called a lollipop graph. I mean chart. So family is at 75. So that means 75% of participants nominated their family members, and so on and so forth. Right? This is about like 68 probably. This is about 50%. So, and then you do the same thing, but the bottom one is navigational capital. Um, and what's striking to me is um, how much family matters in how you think, as a scientist. Like the way you observe the world, scientific observation, the way you justify your ideas. And actually, a lot of the participants, they nominate their family, even if, that family member didn't finish high school or go to college, but they still had a great effect on the way they think critically. And so these are some of the, I don't think we'll have time, but these are just some of the narratives that they told me, right? Because not only did I get the information like who and what and their demographic info, um, they had an option to tell me some stories of why they nominated the people they nominated, right? And so with scientific observation, relatives really dominated that one type of scientific thinking. And so we have here Callisto, and she said, my mother always told me to question things, and that gave me the scientific aspect of observing things in detail. And then her dad and uncle also encouraged her to look at the big picture. And so at first I was just like, why is there so many family members, right? And then they gave me the stories, and okay, that actually makes sense. And so uh, the people who have impacted them the most are actually the people in their own household. And so we have here Kamala, and she said, my mom always raised me to be observant and aware and to speak my mind and on what I observe. And um, so I think that's really great because we usually don't. Well, I don't know about you, but in the literature, that's like I think it's underrepresented that how much family really helps in scientific thinking, at least for this group. And then also with scientific justification is also one of the main influences. I mean, the highest type of thinking where families dominated, but especially with assertive and analytical matriarchs. So what does that mean? Like matriarch is like your mom, your grandma, your auntie, your big sister. Um, and so this also became when I disaggregated the data by gender. This also came about. And so we have here Elsa. She said her sister always argues with her and has a strong opinion on things. And then with Gwen, her mom always told her to defend her own. And so it's really interesting how, um, maybe they're not, the sister may not be arguing about something scientific necessarily, but it just allowed this student to then be always ready to defend her defend her own ideas and opinions, and that contributed to she somehow translated that into the classroom. So yeah, so I'm gonna stop there because we don't have a lot of time left. I did want to mention um, about a summer institute opportunity that in case you're interested. So last summer, the STEMist Literacy is one of the projects that I'm a part of. We hosted a virtual STEM hip hop camp for DeKalb students. So you have to be in middle school in DeKalb County School District. But basically, they created at the end of it, it was like a 2-week program. It's all virtual. And yeah, they created an album, a STEM hip hop album, and I put the link there. Maybe I'll play like a song or two for you guys. But yeah, if you're in DeKalb County and you're in middle school and you're interested in this is the email that you should email stemmistliteracies@gmail.com. And this grant is at Georgia State, and the main person there is Dr. Goldie Muhammad. Yeah, and I just want to thank y'all. This is my email. If you have any questions for me, this is my website. You can add me on LinkedIn if you have it. I don't know if high school students have LinkedIn nowadays. I have no idea. And this is like the link to my grant. And yeah, I don't know if we have time for a quick demo. We'll see what Carlin says.
Doctor, yeah, you have a few minutes to play a couple of songs. We want to hear them now. You mentioned them.
Oh, okay. Okay. So let me do that then. I think I have to reshare my screen again.
Okay.
Or was I okay?
You didn't take it out, so you can still.
Okay, so you can still. Do you see? You see? Okay. So yeah, I mean, you can check this out also on your own. But basically, this is the STEM hip hop camp. Again, this is not my grant. I just want to make sure y'all know that this is Dr. Goldie Muhammad's grant. But I am the project director, and we put it together with some teaching artists. They're actually hip hop teaching artists and a producer. So they're amazing. Anyway, I'll start with this thing called the preamble because the kids actually created the preamble word for word. They did this all in 30 minutes virtually. I'm just amazed at what happened at this camp because everyone's like uh, mad about virtual learning, but I don't know. We created something great here. So I'll just um hopefully the sound will work. Can y'all hear that?
No, but what
Okay.
you can.
Okay, let me figure out. Maybe I stop sharing and do it again.
Yeah, come back in and make sure you check the box for the audio because sometimes I forget to check. It's like a little tiny box. You could miss it.
Okay. It's telling me the steps on how to do it. Okay, let me see. Open a new Chrome tab. Okay, let me see. Oh, okay. Okay, let me try it again. If not, I can put it in the chat and then
Okay.
Okay. Oh wait, did it do it? Oh, I see now. Okay. Okay, share audio.
That is pretty cool that it says STEM is lit because STEM is lit. Right?
Okay, let's do it all over again. So this preamble was created by the students.
Okay, we can hear it now.
Okay.
We, the hip hop brother and sister artists, are young and creative. The purpose of our pens is to tell a story and express who we are and who we want to be, word by word. We use our pens to speak out on critical issues so that our ideas are heard in the world.
Through our lyrics, we promise to help those who are in pain. Our pen is our sword and shield, helping to carve a path to protect our freedom. We won't be negatively defined by the color of our skin. We will be defined by who we are.
Through our creative genius, we use our pens as power to show our perspectives and improve the state of humanity. Our pens are proof of our existence. Writing helps us to express our feelings while showing who we are.
Okay, the cab. Anybody here from the cab?
So do they create the beats too, or they just write the lyrics?
So they wrote the lyrics, and then the collaborator teaching hip hop artists, one of them or two of them, they did the beats and they overlaid everything.
Okay.
I'm gonna play this one because it's COVID and we're going through it, but just showing y'all what these kids did in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Stop the virus, stay inside, wash your hands. COVID-19 is coming for you. Tell me what is it you gonna do? Better wash your hands under your fingernails.
We don't wear long, so stay inside. That virus trying to find us, we might not survive if we stay inside and don't solve the virus.
COVID-19 is coming for you. Tell me what is it you gonna do? Better wash your hands under your fingernails.
COVID-19 happened 2020. Don't laugh because it ain't funny. You may stay inside or else we're all gonna die. So we need to quarantine it so we can't survive.
COVID-19 is coming for you. Tell me what is it you gonna do? Better wash your hands under your fingernails. I caught COVID when I went outside. Then I learned that there was nowhere to hide. Then the virus got inside of me and started to destroy my body. COVID-19 is coming for you. your hands under your fingernails too. Oompa, oompa, doobity-doo. COVID-19 is coming
Yeah,
for you.
I'm gonna stop it 'cause I'm looking at the time. Sorry. I didn't
No,
That was
that
awesome.
is awesome.
I'm gonna put the link in the chat. But yeah,
Okay.
it's a great program. We're gonna do it again this summer. So usually, you know, you can apply probably like in on April, May, something like that. So I just wanted to throw it out there because we have a lot of you know, teenagers here. So I just want to put it out there. And I don't know if we have time to look at R, but maybe another time. Sorry.
You know, I definitely had one question that you kind of touched on in your presentation, which is like with science and STEM, there are so many different areas that one can go in. And particularly when you take an interdisciplinary approach, it allows you to be able to, you know, combine different areas that fit, you know, your interests and your needs. I was wondering, you know, what would you say to teens who are in the midst of, you know, exploring the different areas? Maybe if they have selected something that they like, as we know, you put pivot in your presentation, as you know, like there's nothing wrong with changing, you know, what area you want to go into. So can you just speak to, you know, what teens should take away when they are deciding on what area of STEM to go into?
Okay, that's a great question. I mean, I feel like that's not just for teens, but even for adults, right? Because sometimes our interests evolve, right? And so I think there's something internal and external that you have to do. So I think internally you have to figure out, oh, what am I interested in? Even if it's like super random, and like you have no idea what that really means. I think if you just have that interest, then you should go explore it, because you're not gonna know if you really like it or not unless you really try it. And I think that's with everything. And so I think even with adults I know, and I've done this sometimes too, where like, oh, I'm really interested in that, but I don't know if I should, blah, 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 blah. You won't know until you do it. So that if you do it, then you can decide, you know what? I don't like that. And that's okay. You know, or you can say, I really love that. I want more things like that, right? And so I think just go for it. That's, if I can sum it into one thing, just kind of like just do it, go for it. Go for it. You won't know until you get there. And you know, just be bold and fearless about it. Actually, even if you're scared, yeah, you should still do it. Yeah, and if your interests change later, that's also okay, because even adults do that. You know, I think for me, I had to like figure out, is this something that I really want to do, or is this something that are put on me, like imposed on me, right? Maybe I went a little wild with it because I went to all these different things. Um, Sometimes you have to go through and do a thorough investigation, you know, exploration of what you really want, and so I'd say go for it. Don't be scared.
Absolutely. Someone said, I loved hearing about your background in high school and how you became interested in science. You went to high school with my mom.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you came. I don't know who's your mom, but hey, KD, King Drew. That's King Drew. That's where I went. Yeah, I can't see any of the comments or anything. So
That's the most up to date. Particularly when it comes to forming relationships or seeking out mentors. What would be your advice for teens in seeking out mentors?
Okay. I think sometimes, we're like, let's say I'm interested in cancer research, and that's great. I'm only going to look for cancer research mentors. I think it's important, but sometimes it doesn't have to be that specific, right? At that level. I think even more important is like, maybe it could be like, oh, just a scientist in general, but they're really supportive versus someone like super specific in that specific thing you're interested in, but then they don't have time to talk to you, or maybe, they're dismissive. And really, there's a lot of wonderful scientists out there. I mean, look at like the people in this room right now. Like, there's always gonna be like a supportive person, and you have to find that person. But yeah, I think going to, attending these talks, um, trying to join like programs, even if I know it's virtual right now, but I'd say the most exposure I got was trying to join programs. And sometimes my friends are like, "What's that random thing you're gonna do again?" um, but kind of like I was talking about the Kimberly Tanner. Like, I didn't have to take her science education outreach class. I didn't have to teach those little kids, you know, about science or anything. But that random thing I did in 2007, like it became something like a lifelong connection with that mentor, for example. And so, I think just being open, but also feeling safe with that person, right? Don't think that, okay, I have to keep this person because they're like, I don't know, the number one scholar in something, right? But if they're mean to you, like, how is that really helpful to you? Like, like, do they really have your best interest at heart? And that's kind of like, you have to also access your intuition. And so even though you're scientists and they say you have to be objective, you have to access your intuition. Like, in anything, not just in a STEM space, but like in anything. So I'd say cultivate your intuition.
That's a great point.
Oh, thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Yap. I was so intrigued. Like, I knew you did a lot of different things, but I'm like, wow, she's done a lot of different things. So I'm glad Carlin asked you that about exploring your different interests. So thank you so much. We have our survey in the chat. So whether you're watching it live right now or you catch it on our YouTube or Facebook channel, please take a few moments to fill out the survey, because that allows us to keep bringing Teen Science Cafe speakers to you, as well as our other programs. And, we can't wait to do it in person, but right now we're being safe for our scientists and ourselves and you. And so if you want us to keep bringing these virtually to you, fill out the survey, also to help us shape what you want to hear in future speakers. So thank you so much, Dr. Yap. Thank you for everyone that is watching it live or on our YouTube channel or Facebook page. We learned so much for you, but I think the most important thing that we learned is that, there's this image of scientists that are like white guys in the lab coats, right? But you showed us that scientists can do a diversity of things, as well as have a diversity of interest outside of science, but most importantly, have friends and good relationships, right? Because don't sometimes society portrays scientists as this nerd that has no friends, nobody likes them, they're just doing their science in the corner. And your talk showed us, like, you at barbecues, you're traveling the world, you have friends from a diversity. You met, who did you meet? Dougie Fresh, right? So all of those things we can make when we, like you said, be open, explore not only our interest in science, but our diversity of interests. And most importantly, live life and meet people and explore new things. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining the cafe tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Like, it's such an honor to be here in good company. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Good night, everyone.